Can you tell me a little bit about your background? Where did you get your undergrad, your graduate, and any advanced degrees?
I got my undergraduate degree at NYU. I got my PhD in psychology at Harvard, and I've been at University of Wisconsin since 1985.
What is your area of expertise?
I'm a neuroscientist by training, and I study the brain mechanisms that are associated with emotion, and I'm particularly interested in human flourishing and how we can promote it.
Tell me about your study on mindfulness-based kindness curriculum.
The work with the mindfulness-based kindness curriculum is really part of a much broader research program that is focused on the understanding of how contemplative strategies that originally emerged from Asian contemplative traditions can be taught in a secular way to promote well-being in both children and adults. And we've been doing this kind of work for roughly the last 20 years. And it really is the focus of our center. The mission of our center is to cultivate well-being and relieve suffering through a scientific understanding of the mind. And we are interested in strategies that can be used to promote well-being at all ages of the lifespan. And so the work that you are asking about with our mindfulness-based kindness curriculum was specifically designed to explore how young we can actually begin this kind of training. And so we decided that there was reason to think that we can start this in the preschool years when children are 4 and 5 years of age. This is right at the beginning of a sensitive period of brain development. There are 3 major periods that we call sensitive periods of brain development in the first 2 decades of life. The first is right around birth. The second is right around the onset of schooling, between the ages of roughly 4 and 7. And the third is adolescence. And so this is the preschool period, one of the 3 major sensitive periods in early development. And up until our work, there really had been no systematic work of this kind. And so we, in part, wanted to simply determine the feasibility of doing this, and then, if it was feasible, to begin to explore some of the potential beneficial impact of engaging in this kind of program at this age. Our view is that if we can teach kids simple pro-social skills early in life, it can have multiplicative effects as the children develop. And so you can think of this in many ways as a preventative or prophylactic strategy, which may decrease the likelihood of certain problems emerging later in development, which can be very costly to our society. Problems like antisocial behavior, bullying, substance abuse, anxiety and depression, all of which are now being displayed at skyrocketing proportions in our culture. And so if there are things that we can do early on that may decrease the likelihood of these kinds of problems emerging later, it would be extremely important to determine. And if we find evidence that these kind of programs are beneficial, it gives us important data to argue for their widespread dissemination.
You mentioned pro-social behaviors. Can you explain what that is? Can you give me some examples?
Pro-social behavior is behavior that maximizes interpersonal relationships, successful interpersonal relationships, social relationships. And it includes qualities like empathy, appreciation, gratitude, kindness, cooperation, generosity. All of those would be included under the rubric of pro-social behavior.
Can you walk me through the study? What did you and your colleagues actually do? How many kids were involved? What were the ages?
The average age was around 5 years old. This was done in a public school district, the Madison Metropolitan School District. What we did in this study is we randomized children to either the standard curriculum for preschool or to our mindfulness-based kindness curriculum for approximately 90 minutes per week for 1 semester. And we randomized kids by classroom. So if a classroom was randomized to this curriculum, that is the curriculum they received. And we went into the classroom and we actually had instructors who were employees of our center who also had a background in public education. And they went in and actually taught these special classes for this limited period of time. And we tested kids before and after this curriculum, before and after the semester. And we also tested on the same measures control kids. And these are kids who got the standard curriculum, but they took the same tests before and after the semester, just as the kids who went through the kindness curriculum did. And so this allows us to compare pre and post changes in the control group compared to those who received the kindness curriculum. And the basic findings were that on measures of generosity, behavioral measures of generosity, we found that the kids who went through the kindness curriculum behaved more altruistically compared to their standard classroom counterparts. We also administered some cognitive measures that measure a child's ability to focus his attention and to resist distraction. We also included measures of a child's capacity to delay gratification. Some viewers may have heard of the so-called marshmallow test, which was developed by a famous psychologist by the name of Walter Mischel. And basically the marshmallow test entailed giving a kid a marshmallow and the kid being told, this is a 4 or 5-year-old, that you can eat the marshmallow now, but if you wait just a couple of minutes, I'll bring 2 in for you. But in order to get the 2, you can't eat this one now. And so that is essentially a measure of a child's capacity to delay gratification. There are other ways of testing that, but that was the classic way that it was first described. In addition to all these measures, we also looked at the classroom grades that were received by their regular classroom instructors, the regular classroom teachers. And basically what we found is that the kids who went through the kindness curriculum showed improvement on virtually all of the measures that I described compared to the kids who went through the standard curriculum. And what we particularly saw was that on measures of generosity, the kids who went through the kindness curriculum did significantly better. On some of the attention measures, they did significantly better. Their teachers rated them as showing a higher level of social and emotional learning. And finally, on measures of delay of gratification, they also did better. And so these findings in general were very encouraging and suggested that this simple curriculum may really be quite effective and helpful in children this age. Now, having said all that, there are many limitations to this study. It was done on a relatively small sample of kids. The number of children in the study was approximately 200, 100 in each group. For a study of this kind, that's not very many. And it needs to be replicated on a much larger sample size. We need to replicate it in cities that are more diverse than Madison to see the extent to which these findings generalize. But they're sufficiently compelling, we think, that it warrants further consideration and further study.
From the results of the study that you got, what implications does that have for the education system or for parents in general?
And the most important implication is that qualities like kindness and empathy should best be regarded as skills. We don't normally think of kindness as a skill, but it's fundamentally no different than learning how to play the violin or learning to do sports. If you practice at it, you'll get better. And so we think that this is huge because it suggests that we can really build into, and I should just really emphasize this, I would say even bake into our educational system strategies to promote these kinds of qualities in children, because the world would be a different place if we're able to have our next generation be a generation that is concerned with others more than this generation, which I think my generation has really been a generation of self-centeredness and greed, which I think has gotten us into a lot of trouble in this world.
Basically, you're saying that kindness can be taught.
Absolutely. Kindness can be taught. There's no question about it.
Can you give me some examples of some of the techniques that you taught or the instructors were teaching the kids?
In teaching this mindfulness-based kindness curriculum, the first thing to note is that the mindfulness piece or the awareness piece is important to help children stabilize their attention. And this is another important aspect of this. Attention also can be learned, can be educated. Kids can learn to pay attention. And so part of empathy and kindness is enabling children to actually pay attention to what's going on in their own body when interpersonal interactions occur. So if they're playing with another kid and they do something that hurts another kid, hurts another kid's feelings, they can tune into their own body and ask, and the teacher can ask, what are you feeling now in your own body when Johnny is crying? And that really helps to develop these empathic skills, which is an important motivation for kindness. So we need to be able to detect another person's distress and suffering if we are going to equip our children to respond in a pro-social way, in a kind way that will help to relieve their upset or distress. So part of the curriculum involves being able to tune into sensations in the body and learn to identify them and respond to them in an appropriate way.
For parents at home, what can they do to add to this?
Well, one thing they can do is to download our mindfulness-based kindness curriculum. The curriculum that we used in the study that we're discussing is available free on our website to anyone who wishes, and it's available in both English and Spanish. And so I would very much encourage parents to try this for themselves, and the detailed curriculum is available free. And so it's a great resource. It's being used now in many different parts of the world, and I would encourage parents to download it and to begin to try it. There are simple, easily implementable strategies that a parent can potentially try with their own children that are clearly described in this curriculum.
Can you give me some different strategies that parents can try at home?
One example is to help kids to calm down and to cultivate attention. Part of this curriculum involves what we sometimes call belly breathing, where a child can lie down on the floor on their back, and on their tummy we place either a small stone or it could be a stuffed animal, and the children are instructed to simply observe this stone or the stuffed animal rising as they inhale and falling as they exhale, and simply paying attention to that and tuning into their body as they do this. And it's very simple and enormously helpful. Another similar mindfulness technique is to ring a bell and to ask the child to listen very closely to what you hear, and as soon as you no longer can hear a sound, raise your hand. And it's amazing how quiet and still a child can become for that 10 or so seconds during which they can hear the sound. Really simple strategies that can be easily implemented.
Learning basically to be kind, how does that relate to academic success and basically positive life outcomes?
How kindness relates to academic outcomes is an important question. We believe that social and emotional skills of the kind we're talking about, like kindness, are important for academic skills. They're also even more important for what I would call life skills. And so before I directly answer your question, I want to just remind our viewers that success in life, so to speak, and if you look at metrics in early adulthood, metrics like financial success, marital or social relationship success, physical health, likelihood of being involved with substance abuse, those kinds of major life outcomes are not predicted by academic success. They are predicted by social and emotional intelligence. And so what really matters is not so much what your grade point average or your SAT scores are, but the kinds of skills that we're talking about matter more for major life outcomes. Now, having said all that, one of the core skills that is cultivated in the mindfulness-based kindness curriculum is attention. If a child is not paying attention to what is being taught, it will dramatically compromise their ability to learn academic stuff. And so attention is one of the basic building blocks for all other forms of learning. And the fact that we do not systematically educate our children in basic skills of attention, in my view, is nothing short of scandalous. This should be mandatory in all public education. It is so important. And so this is one clear way in which this kind of curriculum, we think, will be directly related to academic success. And the findings that are in the research literature bear that out. We know that kids who go through programs to cultivate these social and emotional skills not only show gains on measures of social and emotional functioning, but they show gains on academic performance and standardized test scores.
Teaching kids to be kind when they're so young, how does that relate to later life skills?
Well, one of the things that's important to emphasize is that while we see gains on our kindness curriculum, none of us believe that the gains will persist unless the children keep practicing. It's like physical exercise. All of us know that if we go to the gym and we work out for a few months and get in really great shape and then stop exercising, the effects will wear off. And so this is not a magic bullet. What we envision is that we're equipping kids with simple skills that they can actually continue to utilize day in and day out for the rest of their lives. And if the right kinds of support are not built into the system to help remind them of this, we don't think it's going to be successful. And so it's very important that the kids continue to practice. With this kind of practice, we think that these are the skills which are going to be critical for life success. The ability to work with others is so fundamental in learning in the workplace and in our home life. And so if we don't learn basic skills of empathy, basic skills of appreciation and gratitude, how can we effectively work with others? And so this is something really fundamental. And I would go even further to say, particularly in this day and age, these skills are fundamental to civility and to democracy. And we are in an environment now today in our country where these core values are being questioned. And I think that we all have a moral obligation to do whatever we can to cultivate the right kinds of skills in the next generation so that they will recognize what needs to be nurtured in order for the core values that our founding fathers were so attentive to can actually flourish.
What are the next steps for this research?
The next steps for this research are to examine the extent to which these strategies, this kind of intervention, can be disseminated more widely in more diverse populations. We are engaged in collaborative work now in Mexico, in very impoverished communities, to examine the extent to which people who are really in significant poverty can benefit from this kind of training. We are also interested in examining how we can promote support for these kinds of practices as kids develop and go through through K through 12. And so ideally, we want to be able to see how to best support these kinds of habits throughout the standard period of education. So these are all issues which remain to be explored.